This is it, this is it!
I absolutely love it.
We might be approaching our dreamland now.
Nowhere has grabbed us as much as, oh my god, I could see us living here as Dream Glen. Kind of crazy that we bought it after only seeing it once.
Definitely not solid underfoot.
We're Kim and Del Hogg, and for the last couple of years, we've been on a journey to swap nomadic life for a tiny house in the Scottish Highlands. We've spent years travelling the world and living in different countries, sharing those experiences through our blog and other YouTube channel, Going the Whole Hog. But in 2023, we decided it was time for a base of our own in our home country of Scotland. As travel lovers with minimal possessions and increasingly minimalist mindsets, we knew a tiny house would suit us perfectly. We just had to figure out what tiny house and where to put it. Our initial foray into answering these questions hadn't thrown up much in the way of existing tiny houses that would work for us. But we had at least established that the best answer to where to put it would be to buy our own plot of land and secure planning permission for our wee hoosie. But before we set out on a countrywide plot hunt, we wanted some more concrete answers to that first question of, what tiny house? After what felt like an eternity of searching, but in reality was probably only like a month, I at last came across Eco Living, and suddenly, everything just clicked. They weren't labelling themselves as tiny house builders, but poring over every bit of info on their website and delving into each of their past projects, it seemed I'd stumbled upon exactly the kind of company we were looking for. Aesthetically, their unique small builds aligned with our own ideas, and they had a breadth of experience designing and building all sorts of small spaces, including a couple of micro homes with planning permission as private dwellings, and a tiny cabin on wheels. And unlike all the other tiny house build companies I'd found, Eco gave an easy to understand breakdown of the process and everything that they could do to bring the project to life. From design drawings to planning application submission to the actual building and installation of the house. Really? One small company that could do it all? It seemed we'd found the one for us. A small team who made our big dream of a tiny house feel so much more achievable. I sent them an email describing our ideas and asking about prices and possibilities, and I was so nervous to read their reply, convinced that it would all turn out too good to be true, or just wildly out of our league, budget-wise. But rather serendipitously, we discovered that the build they were just finishing up was very similar to the tiny house we'd described, and they immediately invited us down to their workshop in Dumfries and Galloway to take a look for ourselves. I mean, seriously, what are the chances? The ballpark budget they outlined was higher than the off-the-shelf tiny houses we'd come across so far, but this wasn't a surprise given the bespoke nature of the design and build. And thankfully, it wasn't so much more expensive that it was completely out of reach for us. So we jumped in my mum and dad's car and headed down a couple of days later to meet Sam Booth and Maggie Savage, the couple behind Eco Living. I was quite taken aback in amazement at my first sight of the long shed, a metal-clad, pitched roof tiny house with sweeping panoramic windows, built to function off-grid as a back garden retreat for the owners. Stepping inside, Sam walked us through the space, and we could see the quality materials and craftsmanship that had gone into the build, as well as thoughtful and unique design features that we loved.
It's been really helpful coming down here, not only actually seeing like in real life the kind of buildings that the guys here at Eco Living are making, which is great because you can actually just step inside and properly visualise it for yourself what that might be. But also, I guess because we're just at the very start of all of this, it's been very helpful speaking to Sam and Maggie about the actual process. And I think until speaking to them, we were kind of thinking that it made sense to first of all get the design of the house so that we had that to apply for planning permission and be able to say this is what we're thinking about building and would it pass and whatnot. But now I think it seems like it's the complete opposite, and it makes more sense to find the plot, ideally one that's already got planning permission in place, and then we speak to these guys and come up with a design that basically suits the plot, which I guess does make sense, and it had crossed our minds before, but we also just kind of thought, well, there'll be some universal things like, you want it to be south-facing, you want the light, you want windows in certain positions, but I get what they're saying. So yeah, I think that's helped cement what we do from now, the process, basically. So off to view some plots next, I guess. But yeah, it's beautiful work. Good to actually see something and think, right, well, we might have something like that.
Little did we know that 2 years later, the next round of prospective Echo clients and even a group of Japanese school kids would be getting the same tour we'd just had, but this time of our very own tiny house. We left Echo's workshop confident that they were the perfect choice for our tiny house build, excited to get the project rolling as soon as we'd found a plot to plonk it on. So where do you even start if you're in the market for a plot of land in Scotland? We figured the first step should be narrowing down our own criteria. Then we'd work out how to find it. After speaking to Sam and Maggie about the process, we realised that the most important thing was to look for plots that already have planning permission in principle. This means that the council have already agreed in principle to a house being situated on the plot. Buying a cheap plot without planning permission in principle is risky because you've got no guarantee that the council will approve any kind of dwelling. And at best you have to spend considerable extra time and money going through the full planning permission process. And at worst, you could be stuck with a plot that is refused planning permission altogether. So number 1 on our dream plot wish list was must be sold with planning permission in principle. Number 2 on the list was that it could be anywhere in Scotland that didn't need a ferry to access it. I love Scottish Highlands, particularly the Outer Hebrides, but one of the motivating factors for us wanting to create a base for ourselves in Scotland was my mum's diagnosis with PLS motor neuron disease, and having 24/7 road access to my parents' house was a must. We considered anywhere on the mainland, but we were drawn to the Highlands first and foremost. Number 3 in our considerations list was the general location. Our ideal plot would be in a rural setting with opportunities for hiking, camping and road trip adventures on our doorstep. But we also wanted ease of access to grocery shopping, proximity to key services and minimal risk of access issues in the winter months. And lastly was, of course, the price. The cost of a plot in Scotland can vary massively, and at the end of the day, our budget would be one of the deciding factors. We had to take into account both the initial cost of the plot, but also the extent of work that would be required to transform it into our tiny house base. With this list, we knew what we wanted, but how could we go about finding our ideal plot? Initially, we had no clue. We'd never owned a house or dealt with estate agents or anything like this before, and we just had to figure it out as we went. So I literally Googled plots for sale in Scotland and soon became very addicted to On the Market, checking it every day, filtering results in line with our criteria and compiling a list of possible options. The more time I spent trawling through all the listings, the quicker I got at recognising the potential yays and definite nays and understanding the jargon. I became very familiar with reading through planning application documents, which in turn highlighted more things to consider, such as permission in principle expiry dates, flood risks, and archaeological and environmental constraints. I felt like a bit of a detective at times, following leads to try and get to the bottom of each plot's history and uncover any red flags, of which I found a few. It was a lot to get my head around, but I learned plenty in the process, which I think ultimately led us to making good decisions. With a bunch of potential plots pinned on a map, we borrowed Del's dad's car and set off on a mammoth tour of the far north of Scotland, hitting up as many as we could on one very long and exhausting summer's day. We had high hopes for 2 plots in particular, but figured we should check out the other possible options too, just in case they surprised us.
We might be approaching our dreamland now. This might be our new home.
How far do we have to go?
What does it say? 10 minutes?
I absolutely love this Dell. What was I just saying yesterday about how much I love ferns? And this is just covered in ferns on both sides. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. Those would be our neighbours, Dell. This is it, this is it! There's the sign for the plot.
Site for sale, yeah. So
I absolutely love it so far. So this would be the access track just here. We need to build here, so it's on a bit of a slope. My first thoughts are the drive in here was just incredible, and it's just so peaceful. It's like we got out the car and all we can hear is birds, and it's just so peaceful. Right, let's go have a look. We're gonna have to get over this fence somehow. Because there's a barn in front of me here and it's getting boggy. Idel, I think we can just go through the gate up there. Let's do that instead. I don't want to ruin their fencing. If the neighbours are watching us, which they might be. Parts of the land are like this, all squidgy, the reeds and stuff, but then that bit's solid.
So good news is there's 4G. I've got phone signal and I've got internet at Dream Plot. Right, so we're at the one that's like the really rural one that's got absolutely no services whatsoever. And this bit's solid. This bit's totally fine. And like this.
So where Dell's standing, that would be like the edge of our boundary, more or less. So going from where he is to the fence at the other side.
We left the first plot of the day, which we were already calling Dream Glen, completely smitten, but with questions we weren't sure we'd find answers to. Next up was a plot beside a couple of new rental pods, which didn't feel like the right surroundings for us. Then a couple of plots on the far north coast with the most incredible beach views, but also a view of a busy main road and a bit of a confusing planning backstory, which suggested we'd likely be surrounded by a new build housing development someday. We carried on east along the coast to a few more plots, which were essentially just corners of farming fields, all of which were very exposed, with beautiful big sky views, but not much else to grab us. At 6 PM, we had an appointment with the seller of the next plot, the only time we were actually met by someone to show us around. I think partly because a Shetland pony was grazing on the land, and partly because he was very invested in the sale. The plot looked lush and colourful on a warm summer's evening compared to the drab midwinter photos accompanying the listing, which was a pleasant surprise. Being shown around allowed us to ask questions and garner some extra information, but it also meant we didn't have as much time to just take it all in for ourselves. Approaching 9 PM, we stood gazing out over a sweeping bay, imagining ourselves sitting on our deck listening to the waves in the distance. It was a surprise plot contender, but one that also threw up various questions.
Yeah. So this is facing south, which is ideal, which is what you'd want, because your big windows would be here with that view. So nearing the end of the plot hunt for the day, I think we're going to go and look at one more spot, which is marked on the map. It is very late. It's been a long day. I would say the two plots that we thought we would like the most were the ones that we liked the most. All the other ones which we were like, let's go and see just in case they surprise us, but they don't really look that great. They didn't really look that great and they did not surprise us. Just
things to really consider at all of them. There's kind of pros and cons for all of them. And this one is a really nice view. I love that you can hear the water, hear the ocean. But you would need to build a really, really long access track, which could be very expensive. And there would always be the worry that whoever owns this big field in front could sell it and somebody else might get planning permission to just build a big house right in front of you and you lose your view. But this does seem nice. So that's a little surprise contender. But yeah, the Paddock and Dream Glen, as I've been calling it, the first one that we were at this morning, are definitely two serious considerations. But will the council go for our house design? Will they like it? Will they contest it and not approve it? And everything that we want to do will just fall flat anyway. And it seems like a big risk to buy a plot, even if it's got planning in principle, without really knowing if the kind of thing we want to do would be acceptable to the council. And also at Dream Glen, or Dream Glen, as Del seems to be calling it, or Glen Hog. The mushy ground, the little kind of boggy sections, not across the whole plot, but it does present a little bit of a concern about how wet could that area really get. Is it a flood risk, even though it says it's not a flood risk in that area? But, also that is where we've had the best feeling, basically. We both arrived there and we just felt so good about that place. And the Paddock's got character, but nowhere has grabbed us as much as, oh my God, I could see us living here as Dream Glen. That's a lot of money, that one. I've always said I wanted water views though, Del. I really like seeing the sea and hearing the sea. So this has got some appeal too, I could definitely get used to just sitting out on our deck and looking at this view.
We pondered the options for the next few weeks, talking them over with friends and family, digging deeper into the planning documents, checking out a few more plots that didn't amount to much, and just sitting with the idea and our feelings towards the plots we'd seen. Each had its own initial price tag, but we had no way of knowing even ballpark figures for the groundworks required, and therefore the total cost involved of each plot option. We could, however, make a pretty decent guess at which plots would have cheaper groundworks than others, given the proximity to a road, electricity and water connections, the length of a required access track, and the nature of the terrain. Taking all of this into consideration, along with our original dream plot wishlist criteria, we knew that while our hearts were stuck in Glen Hog, our heads said costs could escalate far beyond our means, and the potential for serious problems relating to the boggy ground and burn running through the land, along with the nearby river and historic ruins, made it feel like we'd be biting off more than we could chew. The Paddock, on the other hand, felt like a pretty sound option. It ticked all of the boxes on our wish list, and while it didn't make my heart sing like Dream Glen, we'd both felt a warm sense of contentment in the space. It felt cosy and characterful, with 15 or so mature sycamore trees, beautiful lichen and moss-covered dry-stained dikes, a beach hedge, and expansive farmland views on 3 sides. We could imagine plonking our tiny house in the middle, and it already feeling like home, without even doing anything with the surrounding land. It was among the most affordable ones that we looked at, and it had the bonus of an existing septic tank on site, close proximity to water and electric connections, and minimal work required to build an access track. All of this meant that costs further down the line would be less compared to some other plot options, making the whole tiny house project seem more achievable to us. The existing planning permission in principle was for a proposed 3-bedroom house, a build project significantly larger than our own proposed tiny house. And unlike any other PIP criteria I'd come across, this one specifically stated that a timber-clad house would be acceptable. And although this wasn't our first choice of cladding due to its expense, this felt like a safety net and gave us confidence that we would be able to get a tiny house design that we wanted approved by planning. At the end of July 2023, we decided the Paddock was the one for us. Our offer of the asking price was accepted verbally, so we did the most adult thing I've ever done and engaged the services of a solicitor to make it official. It took a couple of months for everything to be finalised, during which time we had to produce bank statements, complete identity checks, and wait for communication to go back and forth between the seller's solicitor and ours to answer small queries. I had imagined that our solicitor would be taking charge of looking through title deeds and flagging up any potential problems, but apparently that's only for big boss deals in the movies, and it was very much down to us to read through everything and question anything that we didn't understand or wanted clarification on. I was constantly worried we'd be getting billed an extravagant amount for every question I asked, but in the end, the total fees were as outlined at the start. So I guess questions are normal and don't cost you any extra. A week before we were due to sign on the dotted line, we took a trip up north to visit the Paddock for a second time.
Well, in a few days, the Paddock will officially be ours, so we're back viewing it for a second time. Kind of crazy that we bought it after only seeing it once, but thankfully no regrets now that we're back here, standing in what will be our future home. We're like here checking out the views from all the different angles, trying to decide where do we want windows, where exactly do we want it, what kind of trees are they? Sycamore, by the turns out. We thought they were birch trees, but they're sycamore. They're just like the little helicopter things, which are probably going to be really annoying when they fall. But yeah, it's a good feeling still when we're standing here, so that's good. Good to be back.
Having found Echo to design and build our house and bought the Paddock to locate it, we'd hit some pretty big milestones on our journey to swapping nomad life for tiny house living. But there was still a long way to go before we'd be sitting here in our very own home, soaking up these views. We've been documenting the process from the start, and now we want to share our experience with you. We hope you'll join us next time as the design stage begins. Until then, cheerio from us, the hogs in the Paddock.